On a flight crossing the skies of America, a passenger leaned forward in row 20 and hissed words that froze the cabin. "Don't talk to the pilot." Moments later, a flight attendant arrived, and what unfolded left every soul on board terrified. It was a crisp autumn afternoon as the Boeing 737 prepared for its journey from Dallas to New York. Outside, the sun burned against the horizon, painting the tarmac in golden shades. Inside, passengers shuffled with the impatience and routine tension of air travel. Some were excited, some exhausted, some already asleep before takeoff. From my seat near the middle of the aircraft, I noticed the man in row 20. He had a sharp jawline, restless eyes, and a way of scanning the cabin as if he were cataloging each person. Unlike the others scrolling on their phones, he sat stiff, his fingers tapping against his tray table. The engines roared, and the aircraft lifted into the sky. Conversations softened, headphones slipped on, and the rhythm of the flight settled. But it was then, in that pocket of silence, that the man turned toward the aisle. He leaned forward and muttered, almost loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Don't talk to the pilot." The words seemed misplaced, jagged, and charged with menace. A woman across from him frowned. A teenager glanced up from his iPad. I caught myself holding my breath, unsure if I had even heard correctly. Then the commotion began. A flight attendant, tall, composed, wearing the signature Navy uniform, approached row 20 with a practiced smile. Her voice was calm, but her steps betrayed urgency. "Sir, is everything okay?" The man didn't blink. He repeated, slower this time, with eyes fixed on her. "Don't talk to the pilot." The cabin tightened, as if the very air grew heavier. A couple clutched their child closer. People exchanged nervous looks. His tone wasn't loud, yet it carried a weight that unsettled everyone around him. The attendant, still professional, placed her hand on the top of the seat. "Sir, I'll need you to explain what you mean. Are you feeling unwell?" But the man only stared, his lips pressed into a thin, unyielding line. I could see passengers twisting in their seats to catch a better glimpse, whispers rolling through the rows like ripples on water. A businessman muttered, "What the hell is going on?" A college student whispered to her friend, "Is he dangerous?" The flight attendant's composure cracked just slightly, her jaw tightening, her eyes narrowing as if she weighed whether to alert the cockpit immediately. That hesitation lasted a heartbeat, but in it, the atmosphere changed. The comfortable anonymity of a routine flight evaporated. Something was wrong. The man's words, simple and cryptic, carried a shadow we couldn't yet understand. And for the first time on that flight, the thought crossed my mind. This wasn't going to be an ordinary journey. The seatbelt sign chimed off, but no one moved. Trays stayed upright, elbows stayed tight, eyes darted in the wash of soft cabin light. The flight attendant, her name tag read Maya, kept her voice low and even, the way professionals do when everything in them wants to quicken. She crouched to meet the man in row 20 at eye level, one hand braced against the headrest, the other gently pinching the interphone cord at her waist as if sheer proximity might steady the world. "Sir," she said, "tell me what you need." His jaw worked, as if chewing on words that wouldn't soften. "Don't talk to the pilot." It came out flat, almost rehearsed. No explanation, no edge of panic, just a directive that didn't belong to a paying passenger. I could feel the way strangers become a single organism in a confined space, how we inhale together, how our imaginations sprint ahead of the facts. 2 rows back, a man in a cowboy's cap murmured, "If this guy is joking, it isn't funny." A woman with a paperback clutched the spine so hard it arched. The teenager from before slipped off one ear cup and froze like a deer that's heard the branch snap. Maya tried again. "Are you afraid of flying? Are you having a panic attack?" She checked his breathing with a quick glance at his chest. "We can help. We've got oxygen. We've got water. But I need to understand." He lifted his gaze to the forward bulkhead, toward the sealed gray door. The door that never opens unless policy says so. The door that separates us from the people we trust without ever meeting. His voice thinned. "Don't talk to the pilot." Maya's eyes flicked to her colleague in the galley. A compact man with a buzz cut and the wary posture of someone who's had to break up a fight at 38,000 feet. He nodded and disappeared behind the curtain. Moments later, I heard the faint click of the interphone cradle lifting in the forward galley. Procedure, I thought. Calm, practiced procedure. Then we hit a pocket of chop. Nothing violent, just the kind that rattles lids and reminds you that steel and skin and sky are in negotiation. A nervous laugh spooled out from somewhere near the window. The captain's voice came over the PA, mild and southern, almost warm. "Folks, we've got a few light bumps up here as we cross a jet stream. Should be through it shortly. Keep those seatbelts fastened when you're seated." The man in row 20 flinched, as if the announcement were aimed at him personally. He pressed his fingertips to his temples and bowed his head. I noticed the details now that adrenaline had sharpened my sight. A frayed cuff, a faint chemical smell like hospital sanitizer, a disposable wristband pale against his skin, the kind they loop on you when they discharge you, but aren't quite sure you're ready. Maya saw it too. Her voice softened. "Sir, were you just at a hospital?" He swallowed. His eyes glassed, then cleared, like a wave receding. "Don't talk to the pilot." He sounded tired now, as if the phrase were a sandbag he'd been carrying that finally dragged his shoulders down. "Please." From the front, the buzz-cut attendant, Drew, the pin on his vest said, returned with a discreet urgency. He crouched behind the last row of first class, where the curtain swayed like a stage wing. He caught Maya's eye and tapped his wrist under his sleeve, a tiny, practiced sign, "Cockpit informed." I imagined how that call sounded. Calm phrases, key words, no drama, passenger verbalizing unusual request, monitoring, no physical threat at this time. The language of aviation is built to boil fear down to procedure. Still, the cabin chained. The mother across the aisle slid her sleeping child closer and buckled the extra strap. The businessman flattened his phone face down on the tray table as if anything reflective might become target or tool. The teenager plugged both ear cups back in, but didn't press play. The music was a prop for pretending the world was normal. "Sir," Maya said, and this time she let the training fall away just enough for her humanity to show. "My job is to keep everyone safe, including you. If something is wrong, I need you to tell me why we shouldn't speak to the pilots." For a long moment, nothing. Then his lips parted, the dry crackle of a confession beginning. But a soft ding cut through. The call light, not his. 3 rows forward, a hand shot up, trembling. An elderly man with a plaid blanket over his knees was pale, lips slightly blue. His wife waved, eyes wide. He feels faint," she said to no one and everyone. In an instant, the focus of the cabin split like a beam through glass. Drew peeled away, rolling the medical kit out of the forward galley with practiced speed. Maya's head turned toward the call light, then back to row 20. For one breath, the entire aircraft hovered between 2 dramas. "Drew's got him," she said to herself more than anyone, then to the man in row 20. "Don't move. I'll be right back. Please, stay seated." She stood, and when she did, the man's hand shot out, not to grab her, not to strike, only to hover in the air, fingers shaking as if he'd just reached a cliff's edge and decided not to jump. "Don't talk to the pilot," he whispered again. And it was no longer a command. It was a plea. I watched the cabin become a choreography of care. Drew knelt by the elderly man, clipped a pulse oximeter on, asked questions in a steady cadence. Another attendant emerged with bottled oxygen, twisting the regulator with a firm, practiced turn. The wife breathed again when the color returned to her husband's lips. Around them, strangers softened. One handed over a spare bottle of water, another tucked the blanket tighter. In row 20, the man's knee bounced a nervous metronome. He looked toward the cockpit door and then away, like someone afraid to look at the sun. I thought of the phrase that flight crews use: aviate, navigate, communicate, in that order. The cockpit would be doing that now, flying, charting, listening. And down the aisle, our small human drama kept unfolding in the seats where we live our anonymous lives for a few hours at a time. When Maya returned, the line in her shoulders told me the elderly man was stable. She crouched again. "Okay," she said gently. "You have my full attention. Why shouldn't we talk to the pilot?" He finally looked at her, really looked, as if deciphering whether she was enemy or lifeline. His voice scraped the bottom of his throat. "Because if you do, he'll know I'm here." A slow, serrated silence cut through the row. Maya didn't recoil. She absorbed. "Who will know you're here?" she asked, not blinking. He licked his lips. For the first time, the words changed shape. "My brother," he said. "He's flying this plane." Maya held his gaze, and something passed between them. Recognition, calculation, a hint of dread. "And is that bad news?" she asked. His eyes flicked to the door again, then down to his hands. When he spoke, the line of his mouth trembled. "He has a restraining order against me," he said quietly, almost ashamed. "If you call him, he'll think I'm breaking it. He'll panic. And when he panics, he stopped, swallowed, tried again. He doesn't do well when he panics." I felt the cabin tilt, not physically, but narratively. The shape of the fear was changing, trading the abstract for the painfully specific. Not a bomb, not a hijacker. Something far more human and perhaps just as dangerous. A broken line between two brothers, one of them behind a locked door at the sharp end of the aircraft. Maya exhaled a breath I hadn't realized she'd been holding. She stood, slow, thoughtful. "Okay," she said. "Okay." She glanced forward, then back. Procedure and empathy were wrestling inside her. "I need you to stay calm and seated. No sudden moves. I'm going to step away for 1 minute." He nodded, eyes on his hands. Maya walked to the galley and lifted the interphone. Her voice, low and measured, carried only a few words I could make out. Situation developing. Possible personal connection to flight deck. Request guidance. She listened, nodded, said copy, then hung up. When she raised the curtain and stepped back into the aisle, the cabin was so quiet I could hear ice settle in a plastic cup. She moved toward row 20 with a resolve that felt heavier than before. "Sir," she said, stopping at his seat, "I believe you, but we have rules for a reason. And we also have ways to handle this without alarming the cockpit. You're going to help me, and I'm going to help you." His eyes met hers, wet and wary. "How?" She angled her body to shield their exchange from curious eyes. "You're going to tell me why you're on this flight and what happened with your brother. All of it. And I'm going to decide what the safest next step is for everyone on board." The engines droned. The air hummed. Somewhere over the Midwest, a straight line on a flight tracker traced our path through a blue digital sky. Inside our aluminum tube, 2 stories braided into one. A medical scare that had already resolved and a family crisis we were only beginning to understand. He took a breath that sounded like a surrender. "We haven't spoken in 2 years, he said. "The last time we did, he said if he ever saw me again near his work, He faltered, shook his head. "I didn't think he'd be flying this route. I thought I could get to New York and leave a letter with his union rep. No contact, no violation, just words on paper." He looked at the door again, guilt and longing warring on his face. "I just don't want him to know I'm here." "Okay," Maya said, voice steady, eyes soft. "Then let's make sure the only thing the flight deck hears is what helps them fly the airplane." She pressed the call button above their seats, not the one that summons a pilot, but the one that summons a plan. And somewhere beyond that door, the captain's world remained the same. Aviate, navigate, communicate. While ours had narrowed to 2 brothers and the thin, unbreakable rule of a locked cockpit between them. The hum of the engines filled the silence, steady and indifferent, as if mocking the turbulence inside the cabin. Outside, a sea of clouds stretched endlessly under the late afternoon sun, glowing in shades of gold and silver. But in row 20, the air was thick, every breath measured, every glance sharpened. Maya stood poised, her heels anchored against the narrow aisle carpet. She had the look of someone who had spent years balancing compassion and discipline, and now both were being tested at 35,000 feet. "Tell me everything," she urged softly, crouching beside the man. "We have time before we land. Use it." The man, his name tag from the hospital wristband, finally visible, Daniel Harper, clutched his knees as if holding himself together. His voice trembled with both shame and urgency. "My brother, Captain Michael Harper, is flying this plane," he said. "I never meant to see him here, but he can't know I'm on board. He can't—" He closed his eyes. as if conjuring the past would cut too deep. Maya's brows furrowed. "Why? What happened between you two?" He exhaled slowly, as though forcing open a locked chest. "We were inseparable once, grew up in Oklahoma, same school, same dreams. He wanted the Air Force, I wanted medicine. But when Mom got sick, everything broke. I couldn't handle the pressure, started drinking, then worse. Michael, he carried me through rehab twice. But the last time," Daniel's voice cracked, "I said things no brother should ever hear. He got a restraining order. He had to protect himself." The confession spilled like water, finding its way through cracks. Passengers nearby leaned subtly closer, their faces taut with curiosity and dread. The cabin was no longer anonymous. It had become an unwilling jury. Maya, careful not to let the emotion overwhelm procedure, nodded once. "Daniel, listen. The cockpit already knows something unusual is happening. If they connect your name, your brother might react. So I need you to stay calm and trust me." Daniel's jaw clenched. "That's what I'm afraid of. Michael doesn't handle surprises well. If he thinks I'm stalking him, he'll lose focus. He's always been brilliant but impulsive under stress. If he panics, everyone here is at risk." The words rippled like a chill through the rows. A businessman muttered under his breath, "This is insane." A young woman clutched her rosary. Maya inhaled, steadying herself. She knew that inflaming the cabin's fears could be catastrophic, so she leaned closer, lowering her voice to where only Daniel and a few strained ears could catch. "Then help me keep him steady. If what you say is true, we need to manage this, not hide from it." Daniel's eyes darted to the cockpit door again. His whisper was raw, nearly breaking. "He hasn't forgiven me. If my name crosses that radio, he'll fall apart. Please, don't let him know." For a moment, Maya considered the impossible balance she was being asked to keep. Transparency versus safety, rules versus humanity. But before she could answer, the PA system crackled again. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain," came the voice. Measured, confident, unmistakably steady. "We're expecting some shifting weather as we approach Ohio airspace. Please remain seated with seatbelts fastened." Daniel flinched as though struck. His eyes glazed, locked on the speaker above his head. "That's him," he whispered. "That's my brother." The revelation sent a shiver through the cabin. It was no longer theory. The pilot guiding 200 lives through the skies was indeed connected, by blood, by history, by fracture, to the man trembling in row 20. Maya straightened, her face resolute. "Daniel, I can't promise to keep this secret, but I can promise to handle it carefully, for your sake, and everyone's." Daniel's lips quivered, but he gave the faintest nod. The tension pressed down like extra gravity, heavy enough to bend spines. In the galley, Drew exchanged a glance with Maya that said everything. "This is bigger than us now." For the first time since boarding, Daniel's voice broke entirely. "If Michael finds out I'm here, he won't see his brother. He'll see the man who ruined his trust." And as the engines roared into the thinning evening air, every passenger could feel it. The fate of the flight no longer hinged only on the weather or the machinery, but on two brothers whose fractured past had followed them into the sky. The cabin lights dimmed as evening draped the sky. Through the oval windows, streaks of crimson and violet painted the horizon, a canvas of calm that mocked the storm brewing inside. Conversations had dwindled to nervous whispers, the kind that broke off mid-sentence whenever Maya walked past. Everyone sensed it now. Something had cracked the shell of normalcy. Daniel sat rigid in row 20, his hospital wristband catching the glow of the overhead lights. He looked less like a threat and more like a man unraveling. Yet his words still echoed in my ears. "If Michael knows I'm here, he'll panic." Maya crouched at his side again, her voice steady, though her eyes revealed the weight of a choice no training manual had prepared her for. "Daniel, I've informed the purser. The cockpit hasn't been told your name. For now, they only know we have a distressed passenger. That buys us time. But I need you to help me keep this contained." Daniel's voice was raw, every syllable cracked with fear. "You don't understand." Michael's temper. When we were kids, if something didn't go his way, he would lash out. He's controlled, yes, but under stress? If he thinks I'm violating that restraining order, he'll see it as betrayal all over again. And he's the one holding the yoke. A shudder rippled through my spine. The man guiding this aircraft, responsible for every breath in this cabin, might be fragile when faced with his past. Maya inhaled deeply, hiding her own tremor. Daniel, your brother is a captain. He trained for years to manage crises. He's not that boy anymore. Daniel shook his head, gripping the armrest so hard his knuckles whitened. You didn't see him the day I left rehab the last time. He said if he ever had to deal with me again, it would destroy him. Do you get it? Destroy him. Passengers shifted uneasily. A woman whispered prayers into her sleeve. A businessman glanced toward the cockpit door as if calculating the unthinkable. Was the man behind it truly capable of collapse? Then it happened. A sudden jolt pitched the plane, drinks sloshing in cups, bags rattling in overhead bins. Gasps erupted. A child cried out. The captain's voice came over the PA, calm but clipped. Ladies and gentlemen, we're encountering some stronger turbulence. Flight attendants, please secure the cabin and take your seats. But to Daniel, the announcement was something else entirely. His eyes went wide, his breath short. He knows. He knows I'm here. No, Maya said firmly, placing a hand on his shoulder. This is weather, nothing more. Yet his panic spread like static through the row. Passengers twisted to look, fear sharpening their movements. One man muttered, If he's connected to the pilot, why are we even letting him sit here? Another added, What if this isn't just turbulence? Maya raised her hand, silencing them with a commanding calm. Everyone, please, focus on your seatbelts. We are safe. Her voice was steady, but her pulse throbbed visibly at her temple. Daniel, trembling, whispered to her alone. If something happens up there, it won't be the storm. It'll be Michael and me. Maya leaned closer, her eyes fierce, her voice steel-wrapped in velvet. Then we need to make sure you're not his trigger. Do you understand? The only way this ends safely is if you stay silent, composed, invisible. Daniel swallowed hard, nodding once, but his entire body quivered like a live wire. The turbulence rattled again, trays clattering, and passengers braced themselves. In that chaos, the fragile truth hung in the air. This wasn't only a battle against the weather. It was a battle against memory, guilt, and the fragile line between two brothers, one locked in the cockpit and the other stranded in row 20. And as the aircraft steadied, the silence that followed was heavier than the shaking had been. We all knew the real turbulence had only just begun. The turbulence subsided, but the fear it stirred didn't. Passengers sat stiff, their knuckles pale against armrests, their eyes flicking between the cockpit door and the trembling figure in row 20. The air was heavy, like the hush before thunder. Maya had taken the jump seat nearby, close enough to intervene if Daniel's panic worsened. Her presence radiated steadiness, but beneath the surface, she was calculating risk, passenger safety, crew protocol, the possibility of escalation. She knew she was balancing on the thinnest edge of trust. Daniel's hands shook as he twisted the hospital wristband on his arm, his voice barely audible above the steady drone of engines. He can't see me. If he does, he'll think I'm here to ruin him all over again. Maya leaned closer, her tone firm but not unkind. Daniel, no one is going to ruin anyone. But you have to understand, keeping this secret may not be an option for long. If your condition worsens, or if passengers panic, the captain will need to be informed. He pressed his palms to his face. You don't know him like I do. And then it happened, the spark that lit the powder. A man 2 rows up who had been eavesdropping with growing impatience snapped. He twisted in his seat, voice sharp enough to pierce the tense cabin. We deserve to know the truth. If the pilot's brother is sitting here and he's unstable, that's our lives at risk. Heads turned instantly. Whispers flared, louder this time, not contained. What did he say? The pilot's brother? What's going on? Daniel shrank into his seat, face pale, shoulders curling inwards as though he could vanish into the fabric. Maya rose immediately, hands outstretched. Please, everyone, remain calm. This passenger is not a danger to you. The flight is safe. The cockpit is fully in control. But reassurance had limits. The businessman slammed his tray shut, eyes flashing. Safe? We're flying with a captain who might lose his head if he finds out this guy is on board? You expect us to just sit here? The murmurs swelled, panic feeding panic. A mother clutched her child tighter. A teenager muttered, This is like a movie, man. The atmosphere spiraled, fear becoming contagious. Maya raised her voice just enough to cut through. Listen to me. The cockpit is secure, the flight is stable, and nothing is going to jeopardize your safety. But you must trust the crew and let us handle this. Her authority quelled the noise, if only slightly, but the damage was done. The secret was no longer secret. Daniel's past had seeped into the cabin like smoke, impossible to contain. Tears welled in his eyes as he turned toward Maya, voice cracking. Now he'll know. Someone will tell him. And when he hears my name, he shook his head violently. He won't fly the same. He'll think I came here to destroy him. Maya crouched, lowering herself to his eye level, her voice quiet but deliberate. Or Daniel, he might see the brother who wants to make amends. You're letting fear dictate a story that hasn't been written yet. Daniel froze, breathing shallow, the idea cutting through his panic like a shard of light. But before he could reply, the interphone buzzed in the galley. Drew answered, listened, and turned toward Maya, his expression taut. The captain wants a status update, Drew said carefully. Now. Every passenger seemed to inhale at once. The question hung in the recycled air, heavier than gravity. Would Maya reveal the truth or protect Daniel's secret a little longer? The cabin was hushed, but it was not peace. It was the kind of silence that hummed with tension, every passenger perched on the edge of suspicion and fear. The interphone in Drew's hand buzzed again, a shrill reminder that the cockpit was waiting for answers. Maya rose slowly, her professional mask firmly in place, though her eyes betrayed the storm raging inside. She stepped toward the galley where passengers couldn't hear, but their eyes followed her, clinging to her every move. Drew whispered, "They want clarity. What do we tell them?" Maya exhaled through her nose, steady but sharp. "If we say his name, we risk destabilizing the very person flying this aircraft. If we don't, we risk the passengers thinking we're hiding a threat." She glanced back at Daniel, hunched in his seat, head bowed like a man awaiting trial. For a moment, she pressed her palms to the counter, grounding herself. Then she lifted the receiver. Her words were calm, precise, every syllable measured. "Flight deck, this is Maya. Passenger in row 20 remains under observation. No violence, no attempts to interfere. He's anxious, recovering from recent medical treatment. No escalation at this time. Cabin is secure." Static. Then the captain's voice crackled back. Strong, professional, familiar. "Copy that. Continue monitoring. Inform me of any changes. We'll be landing in just over an hour." Maya hung up, her heart pounding. She had withheld the truth, but the truth had a way of finding its own path. And it did, sooner than anyone expected. A passenger near row 18, the impatient businessman, leaned into the aisle and raised his voice. "Captain! Hey, Captain! Your brother is back here!" His words ricocheted through the cabin like a dropped tray clattering down the aisle. Gasps erupted. Heads turned. Daniel's face drained of color. He pressed his hands over his ears as though he could block out the sound. Maya rushed forward, her voice slicing through the chaos. "Sir, sit down now! You do not shout toward the cockpit ever!" Her command held weight, but the damage was done. Even behind a locked door, the captain had surely heard the echo. The interphone rang instantly. Drew answered, his jaw tightening as he listened. He handed the receiver to Maya, eyes heavy with warning. The voice on the line was clipped, demanding, "Maya, did I hear correctly? Did someone just say my brother is on board?" The silence in the galley was absolute. Passengers strained to hear, though only Maya knew the exact words. She closed her eyes for a fraction of a second, then answered with a weight that threatened to crush her. "Yes, Captain. Daniel Harper is seated in row 20. The pause on the other end was longer than any turbulence. When the voice returned, it was no longer steady. It carried a crack, a sharp edge of disbelief. "Confirm. Daniel? On my aircraft?" Maya steadied her breath. "Confirmed. He has not attempted to interfere. He's distressed but compliant. The cabin remains under control." There was no reply for several seconds, only static, heavy, and loud, as if the whole aircraft held its breath. Then the captain spoke again, his voice lower now, almost personal despite the professional channel. "Understood. Keep him seated. I'll handle this." The line went dead. Maya turned, her expression a blend of resolve and dread. She walked back toward row 20, every eye following her like she carried a verdict. Daniel looked up, his face pale, lips trembling. "He knows, doesn't he?" he whispered. Maya nodded once. "Yes, he knows." The words landed heavier than the plane itself, pressing down on all of us. The cabin, once filled with strangers, now felt like a theater waiting for the final act. Two brothers, one behind the locked door, the other trapped among us, and a sky that offered no escape. The hum of the engines was constant, but inside the cabin it felt like a drumbeat counting down. We were less than an hour from New York, yet the real turbulence wasn't in the sky. It was in the unspoken tension stretching between cockpit and cabin. Maya stood near row 20, her body angled like a shield between Daniel and the watching passengers. Her voice was low, her words for him alone. "He knows you're here. You have two choices now. Stay silent until landing or use this time to say what you've carried for years." Daniel's fingers twisted the hospital wristband again and again. His lips parted, then closed. Finally, he whispered, "If he hears my voice, he'll remember everything I ruined." Before Maya could answer, the interphone rang. She lifted it, listened, then turned to Daniel. Her face had softened in a way I hadn't seen before. "The captain wants to speak with you, now, over this line." The passengers stirred, whispering like leaves in wind. Everyone knew this was the moment. Daniel's hand trembled as he reached for the handset. For a long second, he just held it, staring at the mouthpiece like it was a confession booth. Then he pressed it to his ear. "Michael?" His voice cracked on the name. The reply was tight, controlled, and unmistakably shaken. "Daniel, what are you doing on my aircraft?" Gasps rippled through the cabin. No one dared look away. Daniel swallowed hard. "I wasn't trying to break the order. I wasn't trying to ruin you. I only wanted to leave a letter, to tell you I was sorry. I thought I'd never see you. I didn't know you'd be here." The captain's voice cut through, louder now. "Do you realize what you've done? Do you realize what it means to find you here when I'm responsible for 200 lives?" His anger was real, but beneath it, grief bled through. Daniel bowed his head. "I know, and I deserve your anger, but I couldn't carry the weight anymore. I needed you to know that I never stopped loving you, even when I was lost." The line went silent. Everyone in the cabin leaned in, hearts pounding with the same rhythm. Finally, Michael's voice returned, quieter, fragile. "You nearly destroyed me, Daniel. But hearing you now, I realize maybe I've been carrying the weight too. Maybe we both have." Daniel pressed his forehead to the seat in front of him, tears spilling freely. "I don't want forgiveness today. Just land us safe. That's all I need." There was a pause. Then the captain's tone shifted, firm again, steady as steel. "I'll land this plane. For them. For you. And when we're on the ground, we'll decide what's left between us." The line clicked dead. The cabin exhaled as one. Maya placed a hand gently on Daniel's shoulder. "Whatever happens after landing, you spoke your truth. That's more than most ever do." The city lights of New York soon glittered beneath us, a constellation anchored to Earth. The landing was smooth, controlled, professional, as if the captain had taken all that tension and poured it into precision. When the wheels kissed the runway, applause broke out, raw and relieved. Daniel wept quietly into his hands. And as the plane taxied to the gate, I thought of the thin, locked door that had separated two brothers. Tonight, it had held the weight of years of pain, regret, and love too stubborn to die. When it finally opened, neither of them would be the same.